CNN host Chris Cuomo decided to break out a whiteboard to rebut Bernie Sanders' ideology. This is pretty sad.
So, Senator, I did a lot of homework, talked to a lot of experts, some of which you've used as well, to try to break down single-payer health care. It's very complex, very scary to people, but let's try to simplify it. And I got three big main points of pushback for you to defend. Here we go. The first one is, I've written the word socialism. I'm not here to beat you over the head calling you a socialist, but the problem with the selling point of this is it smacks of the end of capitalism, and that people will say, what Sanders
really
wants
does it,
is
Chris.
socialized medicine.
Hey, Chris, you're going to have to do some more homework, because I think you're going to have to explain to the American people, if Canada can provide health care to all people, the UK can provide health care to all people, every major country on earth can provide health care to all people. I don't think it's that scary.
But they call it socialized medicine.
Well, some people may. So what?
Well, because that's kind of what it is. Government paying for everything, taking the private profit motive out of it, taking private business out of it.
Actually, Chris, actually, it is not. Canadian healthcare system has private doctors, private hospitals, private nonprofit hospitals, doctors practice on their own. What we already have in this country, Chris, which does not scare people, but which people think very highly of, is you got Medicare, right?
Yes.
Medicare is the most popular healthcare program in America today.
True.
So people are saying if it's good for people 65 and older, why shouldn't it be good for everybody in this country?
So that's the suggestion. Now let's go into what the point of pushback might be. 70+% of people in polls say healthcare is their top priority. They're worried about it. They want it to be better. Now that is on Trump's plate because of what they did with the individual mandate and now popping premiums. Sanders, you're right about that. However, the only thing that unites people more when it comes to healthcare than wanting it to be better is the fear of change, okay? So that's going to take trust. And right now, there isn't a lot of trust with you people down in Washington because they see you as breaking this. So what is your pitch for how this is better? That means better outcomes, better experience, better on their pocketbook. How is single payer going to be better when it will require people like me, who has a generous health care policy through their employer, there are 170 million of us, we're going to have to change and come into your new plan. Why is it better?
Well, you're going to change, Chris, not in terms of the doctor you go to. You're going to go to the same doctor.
Watch with that promise.
Hospital.
I heard that gotten somebody in a lot of trouble once.
No.
All right? And how do we deal with the money? This is going to be very expensive. I was reading through all these estimates today about the trillions of dollars that this would cost and how you deal with it. There seem to be two main ways, okay? The first one is cut the costs you're talking about. Have the government be the sole, not just pooling all the people together because in numbers there is strength, but it would mandate what the pricing is. Sounds good. Force the companies to kneel and to come into some kind of obeisance where the people come first. But here's the problem. 1 in 9 people in our economy are employed within healthcare. You would destroy the profit model. You would destroy that industry because it would become so much cheaper.
Name one time ever that Chris Cuomo broke out a whiteboard and tried to go through specifics and break down the flaws in the ideology of any Republican or corporate Democrat. I'll wait. They don't do that. Why? Because there is a pro-establishment bias on CNN. So Chris is in elite circles where everybody scoffs at Bernie Sanders and his pie-in-the-sky unicorn fairy dust, and his job is to prop up the status quo. So that's why he breaks out the fine-tooth comb to go through Bernie's ideology. And by the way, I honestly would have no problem with that if he was at least being accurate and making sense. But it's hilarious that he said, I did a lot of homework for this. And then he goes out there and all he does is parrot factually untrue right-wing talking points. He starts out by doing the scare, ooh, socialism, ooh. You know, instead of actually looking into it and realizing, well, hold on a second now. The police department is technically socialist by that logic. You know, the fire department, the roads, the military. Has anybody ever on CNN broken out a whiteboard and had socialism written when discussing the military, when somebody floats the idea, like Trump just did, of raising the military budget by $80 billion, which, by the way, passed with some help from Democrats, did anybody say, oh, socialism? Ooh. But no, they break out the scare words and the scare tactics when it comes to giving everybody health care, without even fucking realizing we already have socialized medicine in this country. It's Medicare, and it's the most popular form of healthcare in the entire country. Medicare is way more popular than people on the private market. So, man, it's just all right-wing drivel is what it is. He says at one point, well, I mean, listen, why would we want to change when there's people like me, for example? I have generous healthcare through my employer. Oh my goodness. He literally used the argument of like, it's shit, it's fine for a rich guy like me with a wonderful job. So, damn, why would we want to change that when elites have it so well? Oh, I don't know, maybe if you actually did your fucking homework, which you claim to have done, you would have realized very quickly, Chris, that anywhere from 38,000 to 45,000 people die every year in the U.S. from lack of basic health care. That was a Harvard study that found that. And by the way, that doesn't exist in Canada or Norway or France or Sweden or Australia or any place, any developed nation that has a single-payer system. So if you did the homework that you claim to have done, that you would have already had an answer to your bullshit non-point of, hey, I have generous healthcare through my employer, so what the hell, man? Does that mean anything when you look at the broader picture where 20 to 30 million Americans have no health care at all, and medical bills is one of the top causes of bankruptcy, and up to 45,000 people die from not having access to basic health care? So he doesn't even realize he's like undermining his own argument by pointing that out, because obviously, yes, for the mega rich, the U.S. has wonderful health care, but for everybody else, they're fucking struggling, dude. But he's unable to break free from his bubble. It's really a shame. And here's how you know he's utterly full of shit and just parroting propaganda that he found from unreliable sources. He talked about, it's going to be very expensive. It's going to be very expensive. Because that's the main argument that ignorant people make against something like Medicare for All, when it's the furthest thing from the truth. So we've discussed this before. If we keep our same exact system we have now in place for the next decade, our healthcare costs are $49 trillion. If we were to do a Medicare for All system, you cover everybody, and the cost is $32 trillion. And there were horrendously hacky arguments that were made in articles that were written where they just lie and use that scary number. Bernie's healthcare system will cost $39 trillion over a decade. Meanwhile, they give you no context and say, oh, by the way, what would it cost if we didn't do Medicare for All? $49 trillion. So they act like the articles were framed as if it's $32 trillion it's $32 trillion on top of what we already pay. That's the way the articles were framed and what was implied in the articles. As opposed to giving you the full context and saying, well, actually, it's $49 trillion the way we have it right now. If we do Bernie's system, scrap that $49 trillion, it's only $32 trillion, which is a net savings of $17 trillion. But of course, Chris Cuomo doesn't give you the context either because he's massively ignorant and doesn't know that, or he's stupid and he's fallen for all the fucking propaganda, which is probably the case. And then the final point is, look at what he says at the end there. Because this is when, he just kind of exposes what's at the root of his argument here. He literally worried about the profits of the healthcare system. Again, as he's like smugly and arrogantly making an argument against, Bernie's philosophy here, he actually ends up proving why Bernie's philosophy is necessary and why his approach to healthcare is objectively the better approach. Because, no, worrying about profits in the healthcare system is the exact fucking problem. That's how we get a system where it would cost $49 trillion instead of $32 trillion. That's why we have a system where the U.S. spends more than any other country in the world and gets worse outcomes. I mean, come on, man. This is fucking basic stuff. And you know what this reminded me of? This reminded me of when Wolf Blitzer had on Rand Paul, and Rand Paul argued, hey, maybe we shouldn't give weapons to Saudi Arabia as they committed genocide in Yemen. And Wolf's response was something along the lines of, but what about the profits of the defense contractors who were selling those weapons? What? What, bro? He literally worried about profits when Rand Paul was like, hey, genocide happening. Bad. No, genocide is bad. We shouldn't use our weapons to give it to people doing a genocide. Wolf Blitzer was like, what about the profits? That's exactly what Chris Cuomo sounds like here. Bernie, what about the profits of the system that we're currently in right now? Profits? Did Chris Cuomo say anything about the 45,000 people, up to 45,000 people that die from lack of basic health care? No. Did he say anything about the medical bankruptcies? No. Did he say anything about the 20 to 30 million uninsured people? No. So this is just sad. It's sad. Now, in Chris Cuomo's defense, I'm sure he would argue, no, man, listen, I'm just trying to provide the counter arguments that others would give to Bernie, and my job is to parrot what other people would say and then allow him to argue back against those arguments. But listen, as somebody who's in news, that's what you do. You're a journalist, a reporter. You're in news. Your whole job is supposed to be what you're asking Bernie to do here. So it's not to provide the bullshit establishment counterpoints. Your job is actually to correct, to fact check the bullshit coming from the establishment. So you should be even more pro Medicare for all than Bernie Sanders is, because any objective analysis, when you look at the reality of the situation, the facts as they exist in the world, any objective analysis, you'll come to the conclusion very quickly, oh, Medicare for all is just the better system. So your job is to fact check the establishment. Instead of fact checking the establishment, what you're doing is you're attempting to provide counter arguments to Bernie, who's just objectively correct about this question. Listen, I shouldn't be complaining because it's shit like this that makes shows like mine more popular. Because people turn on CNN and they just go, you know, this does smell like bullshit. I don't like what's going on here. And then they go to a show like mine or any of a number of new media outlets and they're like, oh, shit. So he's trying to give the facts and then he's also being honest and giving his take on it. That just seems a lot better than somebody who's... I mean, everything about this guy is weird to me. Even his fake voice and his fake persona. Like, I'm the news guy. Looks like he tries to have that and embody that stereotypical, archetype of a news person. And it's off-putting and it's weird and it's gross and it's not genuine and he sucks at his job.